Welcome everybody. This is George Veter, president of Veter Financial Group, reaching out to everybody here in the middle of March. So we're fading out of winter, going into spring. It's the beautiful time of year. The market's up, had a great year last year. Just kind of things feel great right now. And I want to give you some perspective on, I think, some key data points that help us understand the dynamic of the market right now. First of all, some statistics. The statistics I'm going to be quoting you are February statistics from the Bureau of Economic Statistics, which is a government organization to collect official data. We added jobs in February of 275,000, which was above expectation. So the economy is growing and hiring, which is good. We had unemployment that rose contrary to that to 3.9 from a low of 3.5. Now, that might sound not good that unemployment grew, but actually that's a Fed wish list thing, because unemployment at under 4% is not historically normal. So it creates pricing pressure on wage earners as far as what their employers have to pay them to get them to fill a position, because there's just too few people searching for the jobs available, right? So everybody has to pay more to get somebody hired, and that's inflationary down the road. So the Fed would love unemployment to be around 5%. So 3.9, we're almost to 4%. We've had the longest stretch of below 4% unemployment in 60 years. So this is not normal. And that's a part of what's contributed to the inflationary environment that we've been dealing with. Okay, so economy healthy, we're adding more jobs than we thought we'd be adding. We're starting to get a little more unemployment as some of the downsizing in 2022-23 is actually coming to fruition right now. That's all part of what we know is coming that's going to allow the expansion to continue and the Fed to do what we want them to do, stop raising rates and start lowering rates. Okay, the consumer price index, it rose in February 3.2% from a year earlier and 0.4% in the month of February. So that was in line with expectations. It wasn't better than we thought, and it wasn't worse than we thought. Now, to give you some background for that, inflation peaked, that consumer price index, in the summer of 2022 at 9.1. That's when we went into emergency mode with our monetary policy and started aggressively hiking interest rates in order to calm down that inflation. Interesting for you, the two parts of that CPI number that you might not know that were hyperinflationary, we had fruit juices that were up 27% year over year. And then the next thing that affects all of us is car insurance is up over 20% in the last 12 months. So those are two things that didn't help us very much, but overall 3.2. Now, let's talk a little bit about where the money's coming from for how busy the economy feels. I have clients all the time tell me, gosh, I went to a restaurant and had to wait for a half hour to get served. It's just, things seem busy. Flights are full. When you travel, some cruises you have to wait 3 years to book a cruise, and we thought the cruise lines were going out of business a couple of years ago. So we just have a lot of energy and better feeling in the economy. In fact, consumer confidence, as measured in February, showed that we had an increase in consumer confidence. We're now at a higher number than we have been since 2019 of people that feel like next year's going to be better than this year and are optimistic about the economy. Why is consumer confidence so key to everything? Because 70% of our economy is consumer spending. So if people feel confident, they spend their money. And right now people are feeling confident and they're spending their money. Okay, another thing I think is interesting, the percentage of loans that are more than 60 days delinquent, so people's relationship with debt, is actually at a multi-decade low. They feel like it's going to creep up a little bit, but it's super low. Now, where is the debt that we have coming from? Well, people's houses went up in value. So equity lines are the most prominent place, according to these statistics, where people are taking money. They're taking money out of the houses that appreciated in value over this very hot housing cycle. So anyway, all of that's interesting. Corporate earnings have been very good. Corporate earnings in the fourth quarter were 6% higher than a year ago. In the second quarter and third quarter, we were 7 and 8% higher. So a little off that pace, but certainly not the recession everybody was promising, right? It's been much, much better than anybody anticipated. We were way too pessimistic last year, and certainly that didn't go to fruition and didn't pay off for people if you bought into the pessimistic news cycle. Okay, just a couple other things. I want to remind you that in this transition from a bear market to a bull market, we have a different dynamic that people are experiencing in their emotional makeup. When we have a negative market like we had in 2022, and if you remember, we had a dip in the third quarter of 2023 where everybody was predicting doom and gloom. Well, then we have fear as the emotion that encourages us as investors to do the wrong thing at the wrong time. Makes us want to sell things when we should be buying things, and makes us want to not buy things that we should be buying. That fear emotion becomes irrational, and it leads to investor mistakes. So our job here in this office, we're constantly trying to help people with perspective so they don't make fear mistakes during a market downdraft. Now, because we had a very good year in 2023 and we've had a good start to 2024, and we have these artificial intelligence stocks that have had phenomenal gains, especially NVIDIA, to name one that's up almost 90% for the year. Now we have clients on the other side of the emotional cycle where they have greed going on. So you've heard that the market's driven by two emotions primarily, fear and greed. Well, we've shifted from that intense fear mode to this greed mode. Now we have clients saying, oh, NVIDIA's up that much. How come my portfolio isn't up that much, right? The NASDAQ's up that much representing tech stocks. How come I'm not tracking the NASDAQ or what have you? But my neighbor told me he doubled his money last month or whatever. We have now these comments where people want to go faster then their risk tolerance really should let them go based on their goals and what they tell us is their risk tolerance. But we're having those conversations all the time. So I just will remind you that when we had our last difficult year, which was less than 2 years ago, right, 2022, our memories are short, that the Dow was down less than 9%, okay, because it was value-weighted, has less technology. The NASDAQ was down 33%, okay, versus 9%. So the knife cuts both ways. Everybody was scared to death of technology when it was taking the biggest hit during 2022. Now everybody wants to single concentrate and overweight to technology a year and a half later. We shouldn't do either. We need to make sure we're fully diversified, whether the market's in expansion or contraction. Warren Buffett came out with an article that I read yesterday, and he said we, as investors, we should look at investments in a 10-year horizon viewpoint, not a 10-minute horizon viewpoint. So we need to stay diversified. I'm just going to end on this. In coaching you emotionally as well as pragmatically and helping manage expectations and then helping you pursue and accomplish your goals that you come here and state to us. Part of what we do is kind of therapy-like, right? We're helping calm you down when you need to calm down, and we're helping to pump you up when you need to be pumped up. But there's a discipline in our emotional life that's necessary for us to make good decisions, instead of being tossed to and fro with whatever the emotion of the moment is, okay? Fear or greed. I'm going to recite to you a poem I learned a long time ago about discipline that's helped me in my life. I remind myself of this when I'm not being disciplined in my thoughts or the way that I'm thinking or feeling. So I'll share that with you and just leave you with a final thought. Self-control is at the root of all virtues. When a man yields up his emotions, he yields up his moral freedom. He is carried along the current of life and becomes a slave to his strongest desire for the time being, or emotion for the time being. The most self-governing, self-reliant person is always under discipline. The higher the discipline, the higher will be their moral condition. They must drill their desires and keep them in subjection to the higher powers of their nature, or what makes rational sense. and obey the word of the command of the internal monitor, the conscience. Otherwise, they will be slaves of their inclinations, the sport of feeling and impulse. When I quote that, it makes me sound smarter than I actually am. I love to plagiarize great thoughts. So here's the deal. We're your partner. We're going to help calm you down when you get overzealous, when greed starts taking over the emotional profile of the market. And that's kind of happening now with this AI movement. And then we're going to pump you up when you're over negative because somebody in a YouTube channel in their basement is telling you the sky's falling and the US government's failing and blah, 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 all the negativity. We're going to balance you out. We're going to be the middle, and we're going to get you where you need to go for the least amount of risk necessary. And we're going to be your friend in the process. So I know it was kind of wordy, but that was what was on my mind. God bless us as we go into spring, into this renewal season. Let's take inventory of our blessings. Let's focus on being kind and enjoy this moment in all of our lives. I look forward to the next communication.